As you can see, we are we have a lot. Sorry about that. We have a lot of people behind us. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day, and we are creating hope through action, as it is for this year's theme. As you all know, suicide has become a public health issue, and we need to take steps towards solving this crisis. Young people are taking the action, so should you.
But siku ya admission walienda na baba.
Remember today it is World Suicide Day. Because I call you to represent the organization you are in. I think just find it, come and stand here. We are not going to speak today, but we want to go and change it whenever we need. I start with Madam Stella Waroye from NMS. Milka from Citizen Right. We have Dennis questions. Dennis questions from Basic Needs, Basic Right.
By the way, Sarah, nini unataka hivi uko na stress pala tu unagombana. Kwani shida iko wapi? Uko shida kwa madharau sana. Relax. Hii life itaki stress nyingi.
Umeoga leo.
Sasa mmepita tu.
Uko smart.
Safai.
Kabisa.
Hata siamini Sarah mwenye alikuwa ananyamazana. Sasa hivi angalia bila anakaa.
Sasa chali yako amenikataa. Niko na mimba. Sina kazi.
Hapo ngoja. Hapa hivi kuna watu. Niambie nini? Kama niambie nini? Nenda hapo ndio mada kujua hapa. Nataka mtu ataniambie nini atafanya, mtu atanisaidia specific. Wacheni kushout. Wewe kwanza wewe mwenye umevaa hizi right. Wewe inakaa wewe ndio unafanya hii maneno. Kwa kumwambia tu nini?
Aseme tu kweli kwanza mzuri wa nani? Kabla jiwe kwanza sema mzuri wa nani?
Seki wanasema kabla ujiue uambie kwanza mtoto ni wa nani.
Protestants, and found that Protestants are more likely to die by suicide. He looked also at, he looked at very many factors, but basically looking at the social, he looked at society. Can the society push us to die of suicide? For example, there are societies where there is a lot of government control. The government knows where you are, what you're doing, whom you are talking to. So, it's also found that in such societies, a person which are over-regulated, a person is also likely to die by suicide. And the opposite is also true. So societies where there is also no government, there's no control, everyone is on their own. So also found that in such societies, people are likely to die by suicide. And how do I, as an individual, feel I am integrated into society? Do I feel part of this society, or do I feel I am excluded from society? So these factors. So anytime there is too much, or too little of either being integrated or being regulated by your society, then that becomes a risk factor. 1897, we're talking about 1897. And since 1897, there has continued to be evidence that is generated over time And for now, I can now give you the long answer to the question of what can we do to prevent suicide based on all this work that has gone on over these many years since 1897, when Dukem came up with the first evidence and the first studies. So, in simple terms, and I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. One is less pain. When there's less pain, there is less likelihood of dying by suicide. The less the pain, the less the suicide. And you could also say no pain, no suicide. If you want to simplify it further, no pain, no suicide. So hardly does anyone think about suicide when everything is going well for them. You can take that to the bank. Anyone who is happy is least likely to die by suicide or even think about suicide. So suicide thoughts begin in a human being's mind, and animals don't die by suicide. Only human beings. So in a human being's mind, when they are experiencing pain, so one can ask, what is pain? So pain can be psychological or it can be physical. So by just understanding that less pain, less suicide, or no pain, no suicide, then we can go on and say that to prevent suicide, let us reduce pain. Period. So how will you reduce pain? By ensuring that we have availed health services for people. So look at things like chronic diseases, like cancer, like kidney failure. If you are suffering from a chronic disease, chronic back pain, arthritis, and so on, and or diabetes, and you are in pain, you are likely to think about death. So availing services, health services, is one way of preventing suicide. You reduce pain. Psychological pain. So availing treatment for mental health services. Then will reduce the likelihood of people thinking about pain, or experiencing pain and therefore dying by suicide. And number three, in reducing pain, vulnerable populations. So people are going through different types of difficulties. It could be that they're bereaved, for example. You're going through a tragedy, maybe floods, and so on, or you're victims of violence. You are vulnerable. You have come across some trauma. You are vulnerable. So taking care of the vulnerable persons who are already in pain helps to reduce pain and therefore reduce suicide. Again, no pain, no suicide. Number two, so there will be four. So number two is more hope, less suicide. More hope, less suicide. So if we instill hope in people, then there will be no suicide. And even if people are going through pain, but we can instill hope that things will be better, then there will be less suicide. So in the presence of pain alone, but with a lot of hope, people don't think about dying, because the understanding is that this pain will go away at some point. What can we do then? Specifically, it is about media reporting. How does media report about mental illnesses and even suicide? Every time when there's a suicide that has found its way, not all suicides are reported, but those that find their way in the media, they are always poorly reported. So you find that it is the first thing. It's the first thing in the news. That's wrong. It should never be the first news item. So don't sit there in the newsroom and you're reading the suicide news as the first item. That is wrong. Number two, repeating a suicide story. So suicide stories should never be repeated. Once it's covered once, then that should be it. It should never be covered. Number three, lots and lots of details about how this suicide happened. That this person went and sat somewhere under, they first went to the shop, they bought a poison, then they went somewhere, sat under a tree, they opened the car, they did this. Those kinds of detail encourage someone who is in a similar situation to actually follow the same steps. So you are actually giving them a manual. So details must never be given. And then number four, and this one we are all guilty, sharing a suicide note. So a suicide note should never be shared. And I dare say it should never be read. You don't have to read it. Yeah. So I see a lot of sharing in the media, this is what he's saying. They publish it, and people share all over the place. It is very dangerous to share suicide note, and that encourages what we call copycat suicides. So we should not. So responsible media reporting can create hope for people. And lastly, for media, you can always give information about where this person can get help. So if you are listening to this news and you have a similar problem, please get some help from list the hospitals, Mathare Hospital, KNH, Mbagathi, Kiambu. You will find health services, mental health services there, and you will be assisted. Give information about where people can find help. Poverty reduction, and I'm saying this because suicide is a very complex, people say it's complex, meaning that many factors contribute. So all efforts to reduce poverty also contribute towards reducing the rate of suicide. I know that we are not only responsible for that. It is generally a policy thing. The government, people who are in government have a role to play. Obviously, communities also have a role for self-empowerment. But we should understand that in our country, poverty contributes. In fact, worldwide, suicide is more common in the poorest countries. So if we reduce poverty, we are going to reduce suicide. Then mental health promotion, and this is what most of you do. So if you promote mental health so that people are more knowledgeable, they are more mentally healthy, then there'll be less suicide. And on creating hope, the last one is decriminalization of suicide. I saw some poster by, I think, Zumari, right there. Hashtag decriminalize suicide. Please let us tweet. I've already tweeted decriminalize suicide. So if you are here, please tweet so that we decriminalize suicide, so that people who have suicidal thoughts or who have attempted suicide are not harassed, they are not arrested, they are not put in prison. When they could come to me and I diagnose them with depression, I give them medicine, in another 6-9 months they are well, and they are going home and continuing with their work. We don't need to put anyone in prison. Yeah. So decriminalize suicide. Right now, there's a case at the High Court on decriminalizing of suicide. But it's important that as a society, we now embrace science that while punishing someone who attempted suicide, worked in a society without much information. We didn't know how to deal with this thing, and so people didn't know better. Now we know that we have methods that we can use. So we don't need to have Section 226 in our penal code that says that someone who attempts a suicide commits a misdemeanor. It's not a misdemeanor. It is just a symptom of mental illness. So we should decriminalize suicide. We'll create hope. There'll be less suicides. Number 3 on the main things that we should be able to do to prevent suicide is more connectedness, less suicide. More connectedness, less suicide. So as long as people are connected, as long as people have hobbies, as long as people have strong personal relationships, then they are going to have less of this, suicidal thoughts developing. Even if they are in pain, and even if they are feeling hopeless, but if they are connected, then less likely that they will go on. Obviously, they may develop suicidal thoughts, but those thoughts will not become strong enough to have them attempting. So, increase of connectedness. So, things like mentorship, taking someone under your wing to guide them, and so on. So, more connectedness, less suicide, and that's why people are encouraged. Let's do sports. Let's be with people. Personally, encourage even my patients. Go to church, meet people. Even if you don't believe in God, just go to church, meet people there. I know, and that connectedness will help you improve your life. So let us continue participating in these activities that involve people. Or another person will say, help others, and you'll be good. So that creates a sense of connectedness. So number 4 and last on how can we prevent suicide is means less suicide. So as long as people don't have means to suicide, they are protected to an extent on the question of suicide. So someone can feel like ending their lives, and then it's very strong, and they are planning and they're thinking. But as long as they don't have an easy access to means, people look for means. A gun. They look for poison, whatever. So you have to look for the means. But as long as the means is not available, there will be less suicide. So this is another area where we can do something. Yeah. One thing we can do, even as we are here, let us discourage Kenyans from owning guns. This thing is going to be a problem. In another 10, 15 years, if we don't discourage Kenyans, mtu anaona sasa amepata pesa kidogo, anaenda kutafuta gun kujiprotect. Some of them are elderly people who really, if you ask them now, why do you need a gun? Yes, they just feel they've always had this gun, so they just want to keep having it. But it is a problem, because, and then away from guns, other means are like poisons. For example, this is very common in Kenya. In most of our hospitals, people actually come because of this rat and rats. So if you bought that poison for use for the purpose of killing rats, once umemaliza, tafadhali hiyo yenye imebaki tupa isibaki kwa nyumba, number one. Number two, kama umekuja kwa daktari amekupatia madawa na ushameza, maybe zingine zimebaki, hizo zenye zimebaki tupa. Don't keep these medicines, they are poisons, don't keep them. So reduce the means. And if you have a friend whom you think that is suffering from depression or a mental illness, one of the things you can do is visit them. If there is some danger, around, take it away. Remove the danger from the environment, make it safe. So you reduce the means to suicide. Then there's this thing that most of you and the organizations talk about, gatekeeper training. Who is a gatekeeper? Gatekeeper are people who work in the community and they get in touch with many people. So a health worker can be a gatekeeper. A teacher can be a gatekeeper. So as long as you work in a place where there are many people that you come in touch with, some of those people will come with suicidal thoughts. So you are a gatekeeper because you are the point at which they can come into contact with mental health services. So your role then is to identify and refer. And it can be identify and cancel and refer. So that is the role. So all you organizations that are here, one of the things you can do is organize for gatekeeper trainings on suicide. In my conclusion, I know that today I'm talking to people who are already, part of you are converted, so I'm not preaching. But secondly, you are organizations. So from what I've said about how we can prevent suicide, I've talked about less pain, less suicide, more hope, less suicide, more connectedness, less suicide, less capacity or less means, less suicide. What can we do out of all this? So number one is that gatekeeper training. You can organize gatekeeper trainings through collaborations. Number two, you can disseminate the mental health strategy. Today I was talking to Mheshimiwa, just chatting, and he's very much interested. Mark is very much interested in mental health, and I'm very, very, very happy about that. Tumpigie makofi. Yeah, it's always great to have leaders who are thinking about the real problems affecting us. We had Kasanga now, I think she was nominated, now she's not there, but I'm happy to see that we have other leaders who are taking up the mantle. So dissemination of the mental health strategy in counties, unaweza kuamua unaenda Bungoma County kwa educate about the mental health strategy that is now at the national level. It's back national level. We want to move away from creating documents, good documents that remain at Afya House. So and it's online. So you can pick it, you can go to Bungoma, tell them there's this strategy. How can we localize it to your county? Media training, you can organize, with any media house. You don't have to train all of them. Yeah, you can just say that for me, my organization, Cities Rise, we are going to train K24 crew. Change does not come because you are dealing with everyone, because you are big. No, can just go to one media, even it can be a smaller one, it can even be a radio station. Useme, us, we're going to train staff of Ruben FM on suicide. You know, so then you'll have created a difference by doing that. Number 4, support suicide decriminalization. I've already said that. You can do it online. You can, organize forums. To be honest, suicide decriminalization to me, because of my background in science, it looks so obvious. You know, I don't imagine that there's someone who doesn't understand that suicide is caused by mental illness. But there are people out there, including our religious leaders, who believe that suicide is an offense. You know, that suicide is an offense. So it is up to us to start these conversations even in those places we go to worship. Discourage gun ownership, discourage people storing poisons in their houses. And we continue holding leaders to account so that they can be able to put in place policies that reduce poverty, but they can also invest in mental health. And so that is what your organizations can do to ensure that we prevent suicide. And so lastly, I want to inform you that later this year, my organization, the Kenya Psychiatric Association, will be holding a conference, a scientific conference on youth mental health. And I know that there are many youths here. So you can check on our social media pages to know how you can participate. Asanteni sana.